If you're running a coaching and info business and your revenue isn't growing the same way your audience is, there's a very specific reason for that. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly why that gap exists and what's actually working for the coaches who are winning right now. Because the coaching and info space has changed a lot over the last couple of years. Buyers are more skeptical, they've heard the promises, and they developed a level of skepticism that makes them generally harder to sell than they were 4 or 5 years ago. This means that the old ways of converting your audience, the methods that used to work, are producing less than they used to, and it's not because your offer isn't great, it's not because your content's not performing, it's because the mechanism that you're using to convert your attention into revenue was never built for this level of skepticism or sophistication from buyers. Right now, the top coaching and info businesses are running one specific system that is built for this new generation of buyers, and the coaches who are running it right now successfully are going to build a gap that is nearly impossible to close later on. That is what this video is about. I'm going to break down what that system is, why it works better than anything else right now, and why moving early is going to matter more than most people realize. Now let's talk about the trust recession, because the gap between your audience size and your revenue exists for a specific reason. It's not your offer and it's not your content either. It's that your conversion system was never built for this level of buyer sophistication. Back in 2020, 2021, or 2022, a lot of people were, for the first time buying their first course, investing in their very first coaching program. So they had more hopes, they were less picky, they were less skeptical, and they were more willing to try things. But now in 2026, people have already bought courses before, they bought coaching programs before, they've already tried a lot of options, and they're, more picky, they're more cautious because they know that some of these coaches are not actually, capable of bringing them good results. So people are paying more attention to the offer. People have, a higher, standard for what they buy. So that's why your strategies need to adapt in 2026. Several years ago, a compelling offer was enough to convert. Buyers were early in their journey and it was easier to convince them to buy the program. This version of buyers no longer exists in 2026. Your audience has already bought courses and coaching programs before. They heard the promises and they've been disappointed. Their default state is skepticism when they hear your pitch. This doesn't mean it's impossible to scale a coaching or info business. It just means the bar has increased significantly, and most coaches haven't adapted to reflect this change. Now let's talk about what strategies have stopped working and why they no longer work in 2026. The issue is not that coaches stop putting out good content. Most are posting more than ever before and their audiences are growing, but actually converting that audience is a completely different problem. The old methods were built for an audience who needed less convincing, an audience that was more open to trying a new course or coaching program, but that doesn't exist anymore. You need to adapt. Selling from a story or a DM gives you a limited time with a skeptical buyer. VSLs give you more time, but they still rely on the viewer being very close to booking a call. None of these methods were designed to build trust with a cold and skeptical audience. If you're still relying on these methods, you're probably generating some revenue, but your conversion rates are going to slowly start to decline while your audience keeps growing. And as a result, you're going to leave a lot of money on the table. Because like I said, the problem is not traffic, it's how much your audience trusts you. A skeptical buyer needs to believe the transformation is achievable, and the webinar funnel is the only mechanism built to create that belief shift at scale. A live webinar gives you, 1 to 2 hours with your audience, and that is enough time to tell your story, show expertise, and handle every objection. No other format gives you that kind of time with a room full of potential buyers. The audience goes through an indoctrination video and a belief shifting sequence before the webinar presentation. So by the time they show up to the webinar, came warmed up and engaged. The selling begins before you even start the webinar presentation. After the webinar, you also get to convert those who don't take action with the follow-up sequence and a hard deadline. Non-attendees get the replay and a nurturing sequence that drives them back to book a call. Every part of the funnel is converting a different segment of your audience. So that's the good thing about webinars. Whether someone registers and attends, or maybe they just register but they end up not showing up, you could still convert them because webinars, have a specific process for those that register, attend, show up to the presentation, they go through the live webinar, and then they have a sequence at the end to convert them. And then those other people that, maybe they were interested and for whatever reasons they couldn't show up, you still have, a process for those people. You send them the replay, you send them the nurturing sequence, and you give them that same hard deadline with the bonus offer, with the special discount, with, the same, limited spots, whatever it is that you have. and you can still convert them even though they didn't even attend. So that's the good thing about webinars. Everyone that registers, whether an attendee or not, you have a chance of converting them, and you can nurture them with the live webinar or the replay. And that's what makes webinars so powerful. By the time a prospect books a call from a webinar funnel, they are no longer a cold lead. They've seen the belief shifting sequence, the webinar presentation, and the follow-up sequence, and the sales team is closing a prospect that's already sold on your offer. Webinars fit perfectly into your existing content, email, and paid ad strategy as well. You're not rebuilding your traffic strategy or disrupting what's already working. Instead, you are simply adding a conversion mechanism you're currently missing. Every other funnel in the space works best when your audience is already close to buying. The webinar funnel is the only one that actively shifts the belief required to make them convert. That's what makes it the most powerful conversion mechanism available right now. VSL funnels give you several minutes to build a case for your offer, which used to be enough when buyers were less skeptical and easier to convince. But with skeptical, sophisticated buyers in 2026, it's usually not enough to convert them. An application funnel qualifies a prospect, but it does nothing to build belief before the call. A DM funnel moves people to a booked call as quickly as possible, but it doesn't properly nurture leads. Both put the entire weight on your sales team instead of letting marketing do the heavy lifting. Challenge funnels can match what a webinar does in terms of trust building and transformation selling, but a live challenge runs for 3 to 5 days, and it requires significantly more time investment and more content, and you can't run that weekly or as consistently as you can a webinar funnel. Webinar funnels are scalable, repeatable, and it gets better each time that you run it. It gives you direct control over the sale without relying solely on your sales team. And it creates a window where you can convert a large portion of your audience at once. And no other funnel in 2026 allows you to do this. Not at the level of trust building and not at the level of consistency that webinars allow you. For coaching and info business, the webinar strategy is in a category of its own. Now let's talk about what's the unfair advantage that coaches that have great results, they've already gotten testimonials, they've already gotten case studies, and they actually have real results and they know what they're doing. This method is going to work even better, and I'm going to cover exactly why. Like I said, for coaches who have testimonials, case studies, and real student results, the webinar funnel is where those assets finally get leveraged. The more results you have, the more powerful the webinar strategy becomes. Webinar funnels are built mainly around transformation selling. You address the pain points, you sell the mechanism, and you explain the transformation in detail. You give them a full breakdown of what will change and exactly how it will happen for them. A skeptical buyer can easily scroll past a screenshot without thinking twice, but they cannot ignore a webinar presentation backed by detailed proof of transformation. Coaches who have real results, who run webinars correctly, are nearly impossible to compete with. A lot of people want to run webinars. Maybe it's a new offer, or maybe they're not that experienced of a coach. They're not gonna, be able to get the same, results from webinars as someone who's already established, someone that's already gotten, results for multiple months, maybe even multiple years. In the webinar presentation, you have, the goal of, showing your personal story, establish yourself as an authority, and you also want to showcase all the results that you've gotten in the past, and you want to put different examples because people are always going to have, objections like, will this work for me? I come from this background. Is it going to work for me? And if you have a lot of testimonials, you already have a lot of, student results, you can share different student stories and basically eliminate any doubt that this will work for them, because you need to understand that with your coaching program, with your offer, you're trying to sell a transformation, you're trying to sell them a dream outcome. And if you already have so many testimonials, you've already helped all kinds of people, it's going to be very easy to make it, seem likely that they'll also get results because you just have so many testimonials. So these coaches that, have been in the game for years and they already have, a lot of testimonials are going to do significantly better with the webinar funnel than those coaches that barely have any testimonials or have never gotten, results with their coaching program. So that's another reason why, if you've already, established yourself as a very good coach, you already have a lot of results, you really need to get on webinar funnels, because that's where you get to leverage all these testimonials, all this proof of results that you have. Most coaches in the coaching and info space have heard of webinars. Some have attempted a webinar, but knowing about webinars and executing them correctly is completely different. The coaches who tried webinars before and failed were likely missing several components. Most probably have no belief shifting sequence to warm the audience before the event, or they had no follow-up nurture sequence or hard deadline to convert those people who didn't close live. A poorly built webinar funnel fails to shift beliefs and it produces mediocre results. And a correctly built webinar converts at a significant portion of your audience in a short period of time. The difference between these two outcomes is entirely in the execution. Right now, the majority of coaching and info businesses are not running webinars correctly. A small number are seeing results that their competitors can't compete with. The window between early execution and mass adoption is where you get the biggest returns. And if you're one of the first people in your niche or in your market to run the webinar the right way that it's supposed to be run, you're going to have an advantage over all your competitors. The early mover advantage isn't in being the first to know. It is about being the first to run the system correctly and consistently to scale your revenue. The coaches doing that right now are building an advantage with every single webinar they run. Now, let's talk about what's going to happen to the coaches that don't adopt the strategy and they continue to wait. Your conversion rate will keep dropping while acquisition costs rise. Your audience will continue to grow, but your revenue won't scale with it. The gap between what you're making right now and what you could be making is going to continue to widen over time. Followers are going to engage, but move on without becoming your customer, and the traffic isn't going to be the problem. It's what happens after they enter your funnel. Without the right conversion system in place, that revenue is going to keep slipping through if you don't implement the webinar funnel. Meanwhile, the coaches who already moved early are going to be ahead and they're going to be pulling further away. They're going to be on their 20th webinar by now, and they're going to be improving every component of the system, the belief shifting sequence, the webinar presentation, the offer. All of it is going to start to compound and get them better results over time. And by the time most coaches recognize the shift, the gap will already be significant. And starting from zero at this point is going to be a very difficult position to recover from. You need to understand that your competitors, the people in your niche, the people in similar markets to you, they're attempting webinars, and there's going to be a select few people that are going to start to run webinars correctly. They're going to be able to scale their revenue through webinars. They're going to be able to iterate and improve the webinar strategy over time. By the time other people catch on, it's going to be too late because they've already have a lot of revenue to invest into paid ads. They already have their webinar funnel down. If you want to scale your coaching business and get a lot of people to join your coaching program from a webinar funnel, then you can book a call below and we could talk about your offer, we could talk about your situation, and we could see if this makes sense for your business. And one other thing that I want to say is that webinar funnels are very time intensive. I have AI, I have virtual assistants, I have a team helping me build these out for you. But the problem is that it still requires a lot of time and a lot of attention. So there's a limited amount of people I can work with each month. So again, if you're interested in working with me or learning more about how this could help your business, feel free to book a call. The link is going to be in the description.